Kade Emmerson had not expected the question to come, while he balanced 30 feet above the moor with a trowel in one hand and a bucket of mortar threatening to tip off the scaffold plank. But the Vargoss twins had never been ones to wait for convenient moments. "Choose now, human," Cara said from the ladder below him, her green face tilted up with an expression that mixed determination and something raw he had never seen there before. "Which of us?" Her sister Calla stood on the ground, arms crossed over her woolen work dress, the wind whipping her black braid across her shoulder. Her tusks caught the afternoon light as she added, "No more dancing around it. No more making us both laugh and then walking away. We need an answer." Kade set the trowel down carefully and gripped the scaffold post. 2 months ago he had arrived at the Vargoss holding to rebuild their signal tower, a crumbling stone structure that had warned of raiders and fires across this stretch of moorland for 3 generations. He had expected 6 weeks of quiet work, decent pay, and perhaps some prejudice from the orc family who kept the tower and grazed sheep across the hills. Instead he had found hot meals, fair treatment, and 2 sisters who argued constantly, worked harder than anyone he had ever met, and laughed at his terrible jokes with identical snorting giggles that made him laugh in turn. He had also found himself falling hopelessly in love with one of them, though he had tried to hide it because the situation seemed impossible in ways he did not fully understand. "You know I cannot answer that the way you are asking," he said quietly. The wind carried his words, but both women heard. Cara's knuckles whitened on the ladder rung. Calla's jaw tightened. "Cannot or will not?" Cara demanded. Her voice shook slightly. She was the quieter twin, wiry and quick, the one who climbed to the high crags to retrieve lost lambs and who sang under her breath while working. She was also the one whose eyes followed him when she thought he was not looking, whose laughter came half a second slower as though she were memorizing the moment. She was the one he loved, and he suspected she knew it, which made this harder. "Both," Kade said. He looked down at Calla, then back to Cara. "Because if I choose, I break something that matters more than what I want, and because the question you are asking is not the real question either of you wants answered." Calla moved to the base of the scaffold, her hand on the rough timber frame. She was broader in the shoulder than her sister, faster to smile, quicker to anger. "Speak plainly, Mason. We are not children to be lectured." "No, you are not children," Kade agreed. He climbed down the ladder slowly, aware of both women watching him. When his feet touched the ground he stood between them, close enough to see the fine differences that others missed. The small scar on Cara's left ear from a hawk that had objected to being chased from the lambs. The slightly darker green of Calla's skin, as though she held more of the sun. "You are 2 grown women trapped in a custom that makes no sense, and I am the poor fool who stumbled into the middle of it." "The pairing rule makes perfect sense," Cara said sharply. "Grandmother has explained it 100 times. The rule says paired daughters marry into one household or neither marries at all," Kade said. "Because this holding's grazing right extends across the western moor by charter, and if the holding splits, the charter is void. I understand the logic. What I do not understand is why everyone pretends it is working when it clearly is not." Silence fell except for the wind rattling through the broken upper courses of the tower. A sheep bleated somewhere downslope. Calla and Cara looked at each other, and something passed between them, the wordless communication of twins who had shared every day of their 23 years. "You do not know what you are talking about," Calla said finally, but her voice lacked conviction. "I think I do," Kade said gently. He turned to Calla. "You are in love with Doran, the herder from the Thane holding to the south. You have been meeting him by the boundary stones on your wool-gathering days for months. You think no one has noticed, but I have seen you come back with stars in your eyes and barely any wool." Calla's face darkened, a deeper green flooding her cheeks. "You have been spying." "I have been working on a tower with a clear view of half the moor," Kade said. "And I have been trying very hard not to fall in love with your sister, which meant I noticed when you were distracted by someone else." Cara made a small sound, almost a gasp. Kade made himself look at her. Her dark eyes were enormous, her small tusks pressing into her lower lip as she bit down. "I failed," he said simply. "At not falling in love with you, I failed completely, Cara. But I will not be the reason you are trapped here, and I will not be the reason your sister loses her chance at happiness either." "So what are you proposing?" Cara's voice was barely a whisper. "That you walk away, finish the tower and leave?" "No," Kade said. "I am proposing that I stand before the elders and argue that the pairing rule should be broken. Not because the rule is entirely wrong, but because there is another way to keep the grazing right intact while letting both of you marry where your hearts lie." "Grandmother will never allow it," Calla said flatly. "The rule has held for 2 generations. "Then I will convince her," Kade said, "or I will fail trying. But I will not make you choose between your sister and your future, and I will not let Cara think she has to sacrifice her happiness to free you." Cara was crying now, silent tears tracking down her green cheeks. "You are a fool. The elders will laugh at you. They will throw you off the moor." "Possibly," Kade agreed. "But I am a mason, which means I am trained to solve problems about how things fit together. Land rights are not so different from stones. Everything has to bear weight properly or the whole structure fails." He stepped back from them both, giving them space. "I am going to speak to your grandmother tonight. You should both think about what you actually want, not what you think you are supposed to want. And Calla, you should probably tell Doran what is happening before he hears it from someone else." He walked away before either of them could respond, his heart hammering against his ribs. He had just declared himself to a woman who might not want him despite the looks and the laughter. He had just promised to challenge a family tradition backed by economic necessity and generations of precedent. He had just made himself responsible for an outcome he had no guarantee he could deliver. The smart thing would have been to stay silent, finish the tower, collect his pay, and leave. But Kade had been doing the smart thing his whole life, and it had left him alone on a succession of building sites with nothing but his tools and his wages. For once, he wanted to do the reckless thing, the impossible thing. For once, he wanted to fight for something that mattered. Grandmother Vargoss was 87 years old, green as moss, and sharp as a blade that had been properly maintained for decades. She sat in her chair by the fire in the main room of the longhouse, a shawl around her shoulders despite the relative warmth of the late spring evening, and listened to Kade explain his proposal without interrupting once. When he finished, she was silent for a long moment, her dark eyes measuring him. "You love Cara," she said finally. "It was not a question." "Yes." "And you believe Calla loves this Thane boy, Doran?" "Yes." "And your solution to the pairing rule is to break it." Her voice was neutral, giving nothing away. "My solution is to make it unnecessary," Kade corrected carefully. "The rule exists because the holding cannot be split without losing the Western Moor grazing charter, but the charter does not require that the holding be held by paired sisters. It requires that it not be divided." "Correct," Grandmother Vargoss said. "Which is why the paired daughters marry into one household, one husband, 2 wives, 1 holding. The mathematics are simple." "The mathematics of misery are also simple," Kade said quietly. "Calla would be miserable married to me. I would be miserable knowing I had taken her from the man she loves. Cara would be miserable sharing a husband with her sister when she wants something different. Everyone loses. And your alternative, a joint tenancy, Kade said. Instead of dividing the holding, merge it with the Thane holding. The western moor grazing right stays intact because the land is still under a single title, just a larger one. Cara and I would hold our share, Calla and Doran would hold theirs, but legally it would be a united property. The charter is preserved. Grandmother Vargoss raised one eyebrow, a gesture that was more eloquent than words. You think the Thanes will agree to merge their holding with ours? They have been our neighbors for 40 years and never suggested such a thing. Because there was no benefit to them before, Kade said. But combined grazing rights across both properties would let them run more sheep with better pasture rotation. And they would gain a signal tower on the high point, which benefits everyone's safety. It is a stronger proposition together than either holding alone. You have thought about this. I am a mason, Kade said. I think about how structures bear weight. Grandmother Vargoss tapped her fingers on the arm of her chair. You are also human, which means you do not fully understand what you are proposing. Orcs face enough prejudice without adding humans to our family line. The elders may object on those grounds alone. They may, Kade acknowledged, but the law allows cross-species marriage on the frontier. And if the elders object to me specifically, they will have to state their reasons publicly. I am a guild-certified mason with no criminal record, no debts, and a clean reputation. If they reject the joint tenancy proposal because I am human, they will have to admit that is their reason. A ghost of a smile touched the old woman's face. You think they will not want to look like bigots? I think some of them are bigots and will not care, Kade said bluntly. But I also think some of them are reasonable people who care about their community. If we can give them a solution that works economically and legally, some will support it. We do not need everyone. We just need enough. Grandmother Vargoss was quiet for a long time. The fire crackled. Outside, Kade could hear the twins' voices, low and urgent, probably arguing about what he was doing in here. The Thanes will want compensation, the old woman said finally. A merger is a negotiation, not a gift. What do we offer that they cannot get more easily elsewhere? The tower, Kade said immediately. Once it is rebuilt, it will be the best signal point on this stretch of the moor. A fire lit there can be seen for 15 miles. That is valuable for everyone's safety, but especially for the Thanes holding, which is the most isolated. We offer them joint rights to the tower in addition to the merged grazing. And if they say no, then we find another way, Kade said. There are 4 other holdings within range of the charter. One of them will see the benefit. Grandmother Vargoss studied him with eyes that had seen wars, famines, and the slow grinding prejudice that made life harder for her people with every passing year. You are either very clever or very naive, Mason. I have not decided which. I am probably both, Kade admitted. But I am also serious. I will do the work. I will meet with the Thanes, I will draw up the legal structure, I will stand before the elders and argue the case. All I need is your permission to try. Why? The question was simple, but the weight behind it was enormous. Kade took a breath. Because your granddaughter makes me want to be the kind of man who solves problems instead of walking away from them, he said. Because she deserves a future that is not a cage. Because I have spent 10 years building things for other people, and I would like to build something for myself. And because if this works, it might give other families a way forward when the pairing rule does not fit their circumstances. It might change things for the better. Grandmother Vargoss nodded slowly. You will fail, probably. The Thanes will laugh at you. Their son Doran is a 4th son with no inheritance prospects. His father will never agree to give him a share in a merged holding. Then we negotiate, Kade said. We find what they want and we trade for it. The old woman leaned back in her chair, and for the first time since he had entered the room, she smiled fully. It made her look younger, fierce, and a little dangerous. "You remind me of my late husband. He was also a stubborn fool who thought he could argue the world into making sense. It got him killed in a border skirmish, but he was happy until it did." "I will try to avoid border skirmishes," Kade said. "See that you do," Grandmother Vargoss said. "You have my permission to try your scheme. I will not support you publicly until I see whether it has a chance of working, but I will not forbid it either. That is all I will offer." It was more than Kade had expected. He bowed, a gesture of respect he had learned from watching the twins with their grandmother. "Thank you." "Do not thank me yet," the old woman said. "If you fail, you will break Cara's heart. If you succeed, you will marry into a family that will make demands on you for the rest of your life. Neither outcome is particularly kind to you." "I know," Kade said. "But the alternative is walking away, and I am done doing that." He left the longhouse to find Cara waiting on the step outside. She stood when she saw him, her dark eyes searching his face. "Well," she said, "I could try," Kade said. Cara closed her eyes briefly. "That is her way of saying she thinks you are doomed, but she respects your effort." "I gathered that, Kade." Cara stepped closer to him. She was not a tall woman, barely up to his shoulder, but there was a contained strength in her that made her seem larger. "You do not have to do this. If you want to just walk away when the tower is done, I will understand. You do not owe me anything." "I am not doing this because I owe you," Kade said. He reached out and gently took her hand. Her skin was warm, her palm calloused from rope and tools. "I am doing this because I want a future that has you in it. If you want that too, then I need to make it possible." "I want that," Cara said softly. "I have wanted it since the first week you were here and you fell off the scaffold into the sheep pen and did not even curse, just apologize to the sheep for startling them." "Despite everything," Kade laughed. "That was not my finest moment." "It was perfect," Cara said. "You were perfect." "You are perfect, and I am terrified you are going to get your heart broken trying to make this work." "Then we will both be terrified together," Kade said. He squeezed her hand gently. "Where is Calla?" "Gone to find Doran," Cara said. "She left 10 minutes ago, running like the wolves were chasing her. I think you shamed her a little, pointing out that you had noticed when she was trying to keep it secret." "That was not my intention." "I know," Cara said, "but it needed saying. She has been trying so hard to protect me by hiding what she wants. It was making her miserable. And you?" "I have been trying to protect her by pretending I did not care if you looked at me," Cara said. "We are both idiots." "You are both stubborn and loyal," Kade corrected. "Not the same thing as idiocy." Cara leaned her head against his shoulder, and Kade felt something in his chest ease. For a moment they stood in the near dark, the wind sweeping across the moor, and he let himself believe this might actually work. Then Cara pulled back. "When do you approach the Thanes?" "Tomorrow," Kade said. "No point in waiting. I am coming with you." "Cara, I am coming," she said firmly. "This is my future too. I will not sit here and let you argue for it alone." Kade wanted to argue, wanted to protect her from the potential humiliation and rejection. But he looked at her face and realized she did not need his protection. She needed his partnership. "All right," he said. "We go together." The Thane holding sat in a shallow valley, 2 miles south. A cluster of stone buildings surrounded by pastureland that ran rich and green in the spring rains. Kade and Cara walked the distance in the early morning, the sun just clearing the eastern hills, and arrived to find the family already at work. Doran saw them first. He was a young man about Kade's age, broad-shouldered and dark-haired, with the kind of face that looked serious until he smiled. He was mending a fence when they approached, and his eyes went straight to Cara with an expression of worry. Is Calla all right? She is fine, Cara said. She should be here soon. She wanted to speak to you after she helped grandmother with the morning chores. Doran relaxed slightly, then seemed to realize what their presence might mean. You are the mason, Kade. I am, Kade said. He offered his hand, and after a moment Doran shook it. His grip was strong, his palm rough. I need to speak to your father about a business proposition. Is he available? A proposition involving my sister, I assume, Doran said carefully. Involving both of us, Cara said. And you and Calla if you are serious about her. Doran's face softened when Cara mentioned her sister. I am serious. I would marry her tomorrow if the pairing rule did not stand in the way. That is what we need to talk to your father about, Kade said. Is he here? In the lambing barn, Doran said. He pointed to a long, low building on the north side of the cluster. Fair warning, he is in a foul mood. We lost 2 ewes last night to a cat, and the replacement cost is eating into our market profits. Noted, Kade said. Thank you. They found Thane Sr. in the barn, examining a ewe with a pronounced limp. He was a big man running to fat, with graying hair and a face weathered by 50 years on the moor. He looked up when they entered, and his expression closed when he saw Cara. Vargoss, he said curtly, what brings you here? A proposal that might benefit both our families, Kade said before Cara could respond. He had learned over the years that starting a negotiation with business rather than pleasantries often worked better. My name is Kade Emmerson. I am the mason rebuilding your neighbor's signal tower. I know who you are, Thane said. Human, outsider. Why are you here? Because I am going to marry Cara Vargoss, Kade said bluntly. And her sister is going to marry your son Doran. And for that to happen without destroying the Vargoss grazing charter, we need to propose a joint tenancy that merges your holding with theirs. Thane stared at him. Then he laughed, a short, harsh bark. You are mad. Merge the holdings. Why in all the gods' names would I agree to that? Because it benefits you, Kade said. He pulled a folded paper from his jacket, one he had worked on by candlelight half the night. Combined grazing rights across both properties would let you run 30% more sheep with better pasture rotation. You would gain access to the signal tower on the high point, which improves safety for your most isolated fields. And you would secure a marriage for your 4th son, who currently has no inheritance and no prospects. Doran can find his own way, Thane said, but his eyes had dropped to the paper Kade was unfolding. He can, Kade agreed. Or he can marry a woman he loves and gain a stake in a stronger combined holding. Your choice. Thane snatched the paper and scanned it. Kade had drawn a survey map showing both properties, with annotations marking current grazing patterns, water sources, and the proposed new boundaries of a merged estate. He had also included a rough calculation of increased sheep capacity and projected wool revenue. This is theoretical, Thane said finally. You have no idea whether the charter can legally support a merger. I consulted the land registry in town last month, Kade said. The charter language specifies that the western moor grazing right is tied to undivided ownership. It does not specify that ownership must reside in a single household. A joint tenancy qualifies as undivided. Thane looked up sharply. You went to the registry. I am a mason, Kade said. Research is part of my work. You planned this before you even spoke to my son. I planned for contingencies, Kade corrected. I did not know if Doran was serious about Calla until yesterday, but I knew the pairing rule was a problem and I knew there had to be a legal solution, so I looked for one. Thane turned to Cara. Your grandmother knows about this. She gave him permission to try, Cara said quietly. She does not believe it will work, but she is not forbidding it. Smart woman, Thane said. He looked back at the map and Kade could see him calculating. The man was prejudiced and gruff, but he was not stupid. The numbers were good and they both knew it. "What do you want from me?" Thane asked finally. "A meeting with the elders," Kade said, "jointly presented by both families. The proposal has to come from the people with standing, not from an outsider. If you and Grandmother Vargoss present the joint tenancy together, it has a chance. If I try to present it alone, they will dismiss it out of hand. And if I refuse, then I find another neighboring family to approach," Kade said. "But you are the first choice because Doran and Calla love each other, and because your holding's position makes the merger most advantageous. You stand to gain the most." Thane folded the paper carefully and handed it back. "I need to think." "How long?" Kade asked. "A week." 2 days, Kade countered. "The spring elders gathering is in 10 days. If we are going to propose this, we need time to prepare the formal presentation." Thane scowled. "You are pushy for a human." "I am motivated," Kade said. "There is a difference." The older man stared at him, then at Cara. "You want to marry this one, truly?" "Yes," Cara said. Her voice was steady. "He is human, I noticed. Your children will be half-bloods. They will face prejudice from both sides." "I know," Cara said. "I am choosing him anyway." Thane shook his head slowly. "You are all mad. Fine. 2 days. I will give you my answer then. Now get out of my barn. I have work to do." It was not a warm reception, but it was not an outright rejection either. Kade and Cara left the barn and walked back across the pasture to where Doran was still working on the fence. "Well?" the younger man asked. "He is thinking about it," Kade said. 2 days, Doran nodded slowly. "That is more than I expected. My father does not like change." "No one does," Kade said. "But sometimes change is necessary." They were halfway back to the Vargoss holding when Cara spoke. "You are good at this. Negotiating." "I am good at building," Kade corrected. "Negotiating is just another form of construction. You figure out what everyone needs and you find a structure that supports it. You make it sound simple." "It is not simple," Kade admitted, "but it is logical, and logic I understand." Cara was quiet for a few steps. Then she said, "What if Thane says no? What is your next step?" "There are 3 other families within range," Kade said. "The Grells to the east, the Morrows to the north, the Blacksmith clan to the west. One of them will see the advantage." "And if none of them do?" Kade stopped walking and turned to face her. "Then I stand before the elders alone and argue that the pairing rule should be abolished as unjust and economically inefficient. I will probably lose. The elders will probably tell me to mind my own business. And I will probably have to leave the moor with nothing to show for it except a rebuilt tower and a broken heart. But you will try." "I will try," Kade said, "because the alternative is giving up and I am not good at that." Cara reached up and touched his face, her fingers gentle against his cheek. "I do not deserve you." "You have it backward," Kade said. "I am the one who gets to love you. That is not a burden, it is a gift." She kissed him then, standing in the middle of the moorland path with the wind whipping around them and the heather beginning to bloom in purple drifts. It was not their first kiss, but it was the first one that felt like a promise. When they broke apart, Cara was smiling. "We should get back. Grandmother will want to know what happened." "She probably already knows," Kade said. "I suspect very little happens on this moor that your grandmother does not hear about within an hour." "True," Cara admitted, "but we should tell her anyway. It is respectful." They walked back together, hand in hand, and Kade let himself feel cautiously optimistic. It was a fragile thing, hope. But it was also the thing that kept him putting one stone on top of another, day after day, building structures that would outlast him. The 2 days crawled past with agonizing slowness. Kade worked on the tower, setting the upper courses and beginning the interior stair that would allow access to the beacon platform. Cara worked beside him when she could, hauling stone and mixing mortar, her presence a quiet comfort. Calla appeared on the second day, wind-blown and grinning. "Doran thinks his father will say yes. He has been going over the map you left, asking questions about grazing rotation and water rights." "That is a good sign," Kade said carefully, "but not a certainty." "I know," Calla said. "But it is more than we had before," she sobered. "I owe you an apology." "For what?" "For putting you in the middle of this," Calla said. "For letting it get to the point where you had to be the one to solve it." "You did not put me anywhere," Kade said gently. "I walked into the middle of this myself, and I am solving it because I want to, not because I have to." Calla looked at her sister. "You found a good one." "I know," Cara said softly. On the evening of the second day, Doran arrived at the Vargoss holding just as the sun was setting. Kade was washing mortar off his hands at the pump when he saw the young man walking up the track. "He said yes," Doran called when he was close enough. "My father said yes. He wants to meet with your grandmother tomorrow to work out the details before we approach the elders." Kade felt the tension drain out of his shoulders. "That is good news." "It is more than good news," Doran said. He was grinning widely. "It is a bloody miracle. My father does not trust humans, he does not trust change, and he does not trust anything that makes him look soft. But he looked at your numbers and he could not argue with them." "Numbers do not lie," Kade said. "No, but people do," Doran said. "And he was expecting you to lie, to overstate the benefits or hide the costs. When you did not, it confused him. He respects that." "I will take confused respect," Kade said. "It is a start." The meeting between Grandmother Vargoss and Thane Sr. happened the next morning in the Vargoss longhouse. Kade was not invited, which stung, but Cara explained that the initial negotiation had to happen between the heads of the families. "You are the architect of this plan," she said. "But you are not yet family. It would be an insult to include you before the agreement is formalized." "I understand," Kade said, though he did not entirely. The rules of Orc family politics were still foreign to him. He spent the morning working on the tower's interior stair, cutting and fitting stone treads into the spiral pattern that would lead to the beacon platform. It was detailed, exacting work that required focus, which was good because it kept him from worrying about what was happening in the longhouse below. Cara found him at midday. They agreed on the basic structure: joint tenancy, merged grazing rights, shared access to the tower. Now they are arguing about inheritance provisions for future generations. "That is normal," Kade said. "Every legal agreement has complications. Grandmother wants any children from our marriage to have equal standing with any children from Calla and Doran's marriage. Thane is worried that half-human children will not be accepted by the community and will weaken the family's standing." Kade felt a flash of anger. "What does he want? To exclude our children from inheritance?" "He wants a clause that says leadership of the joint holding passes to full Orc children first," Cara said quietly, "with half-Orc children inheriting only if there are no full Orc heirs. That is discrimination." "Yes," Cara said, "it is, but it is also the reality of the prejudice we will face. Grandmother is arguing against it, but Thane is stubborn." Kade set down his chisel. "Where are they now, still talking?" "Take me to them." Cara hesitated. "Kade, it is not your place to, it is absolutely my place," Kade said. "If we are going to build a future together, it cannot be built on the assumption that our children are lesser. That is a foundation that will crack." Cara studied him, then nodded. "All right, but let me speak first. If you walk in there and start lecturing, Thane will throw you out." They went down to the longhouse together. Grandmother Vargoss and Thane were seated at the long table, papers spread between them, their faces tight with frustration. Both looked up when Kade and Cara entered. This is a private negotiation, Thane said sharply. It is a negotiation about my future, Kade said, which makes it my business. He moved to the table and looked at the papers. He could see the draft agreement, the crossed-out lines, the notes in the margins. You want to include a provision that prioritizes full orc children over half-orc children in inheritance. I want to protect the holdings standing in the community, Thane said. A half-human heir will face challenges a full orc heir will not. You are right, Kade said. They will. But the solution to that is not to codify discrimination into the family law. The solution is to build a holding strong enough that the heir's competence matters more than their blood. Easy for you to say, Thane said. You do not understand the prejudice orcs face. I understand that I am human, which means I face a different kind of prejudice, Kade said. I understand that marrying Cara will make me an outsider in 2 communities instead of 1. I understand that any children we have will navigate a world that sees them as neither fully human nor fully orc. I understand all of that, and I am choosing it anyway because I love her. He leaned forward, his hands flat on the table. But I will not agree to a legal structure that tells our children they are worth less than their cousins. If that is the price of this merger, then the merger fails. We will find another way. Thane's face darkened. You are throwing away the whole agreement over a hypothetical provision about children who do not even exist yet. I am protecting the foundation, Kade said. Because if we build this on the assumption that some children matter less than others, it will poison everything that comes after. You know it will. And so does Grandmother Vargoss, which is why she is arguing against you. Grandmother Vargoss had been silent through the exchange, but now she spoke. The boy is right, Thane. Inheritance should be based on competence and contribution, not blood purity. If we start making those distinctions now, we are no better than the humans who cross the street to avoid our daughters. You are sentimental, Thane said, but his voice had lost some of its edge. I am practical, Grandmother Vargoss said. This merger works because it is fair. Because both families gain and neither is subordinated. If we introduce a hierarchy of blood, it stops being fair. And when things stop being fair, they stop working. Thane was silent for a long time. Finally, he said, equal inheritance rights for all grandchildren, regardless of parentage. But I want it stated that leadership decisions are made jointly by the adult heirs, not imposed by a single line. Agreed, Grandmother Vargoss said immediately. That is reasonable. Kade felt the tightness in his chest ease. Thank you. Do not thank me yet, Thane said gruffly. We still have to get the elders to approve this mess, and some of them will fight it just to be difficult. Let them fight, Grandmother Vargoss said. We have logic and law on our side, and we have time to prepare a proper presentation. Over the next week, Kade learned more about local politics than he had ever wanted to know. The Elders' Council consisted of 12 members, representing the major holdings and craft guilds across the moor. To pass the joint tenancy proposal required a majority vote, which meant they needed 7 supporters. Grandmother Vargoss identified 3 certain votes in favor. Herself, a weaver named Karth who believed in progressive reforms, and a former shepherd who thought the pairing rule was outdated. Thane brought 2 more, a cattleman who respected economic arguments and a stonemason who was inclined to support a fellow tradesman. That left them needing 2 more votes from a pool of 7 uncertain or hostile elders. The worst is going to be Rendall, Grandmother Vargoss said. She was seated at the table with Kade, Thane, and both sets of twins, going over the list. He hates humans, hates change, and hates anything that makes him look like he is not in control. He will vote against the proposal just to prove he can. Can we avoid bringing it to a vote until we know we have the numbers? Kade asked. No, Thane said. The elders' gathering is the only time all 12 are present. If we wait, we lose momentum and people start talking themselves out of it. Then we need to persuade 2 of the uncertain votes, Kade said. He looked at the list. Who is most persuadable? Cara said immediately. She is old, but she is fair. If we can show her that the proposal helps families without hurting the community, she will support it. And the other? Torvan, Doran said. He is the youngest elder, only 40. He was elected to represent the herders. He does not like the old rules, but he also does not want to stick his neck out unless he knows he is on the winning side. So we convince Mara first, Kade said. And we make sure Torvan knows that she is supporting us. That gives him cover to vote yes without looking like a rebel. You make it sound simple, Grandmother Vargoss said dryly. It is not simple, Kade said, but it is achievable. We need to visit Mara and make our case. Who should go? I will, Grandmother Vargoss said. Mara and I have known each other for 60 years. She will listen to me. I will come with you, Cara said quietly. If this is about the pairing rule, she needs to hear from one of the paired daughters. Grandmother Vargoss nodded. Tomorrow, then. We will visit Mara and make the case. The visit to Mara took half a day. The old elder lived on the eastern edge of the moor in a small stone house surrounded by herb gardens. She was ancient, her green skin faded almost to gray, her tusks worn smooth with age. But her eyes were sharp, and she listened without interrupting as Grandmother Vargoss explained the proposal. When the explanation was done, Mara turned to Cara. You want to marry the human mason? Yes, Cara said. And your sister wants to marry the Thane boy? Yes. And you believe this joint tenancy will allow both marriages without destroying the holding? We know it will, Cara said. The law supports it. The economics support it. The only question is whether the community will support it. Mara was quiet for a long moment, her gnarled hands folded in her lap. Then she said, I was a paired daughter once, 70 years ago when the rule was new. My sister and I were forced to marry the same man because our parents could not afford to split the holding. She hated him. I tolerated him. He was decent enough, but it was not a happy household. She looked at Cara with eyes that had seen too much. My sister died in childbirth at 25. I have always wondered if she would have lived if she had been allowed to marry the man she loved, the one who would have made her happy. I will never know. I am sorry, Cara said softly. Do not be sorry, Mara said. Be successful. If this proposal can spare other sisters the misery mine endured, then it is worth supporting. She looked at Grandmother Vargoss. You have my vote. Make sure you do not waste it. We will not, Grandmother Vargoss promised. They left Mara's house with the sun beginning to set, and Cara was smiling for the first time in days. 6 votes. We are halfway there. We need 1 more, Grandmother Vargoss said. And Torvan will not commit until he knows which way the wind is blowing. Then we make sure the wind is blowing our direction, Kade said. We present at the gathering with confidence and clarity. We do not apologize. We do not equivocate. We make it clear that this is the right decision, and we make it easy for the uncertain elders to vote yes. Grandmother Vargoss gave him a long look. You have done this before, presented a controversial proposal to a hostile audience. I have presented to guild councils, Kade said. It is similar. Half of them want to reject you before you open your mouth. The trick is to give the reasonable ones permission to support you. Permission, Grandmother Vargoss repeated. Interesting way to think of it. The elders' gathering was held in the largest barn on the moor, a communal building maintained by all the families for meetings, celebrations, and emergencies. Kade arrived with the Vargoss family and found the barn already half full. The 12 elders sat at a long table at the front, facing rows of benches where the community members could observe. Kade counted perhaps 50 people in the audience, a mix of orcs of all ages. A few humans were scattered through the crowd, traders and craftspeople who did business on the moor. Several people stared at him when he entered. A few whispered. He ignored them and took his seat next to Cara. She was dressed in her best clothes, a green wool dress that brought out the color of her skin, her hair braided neatly. She looked nervous. "Breathe," Kade whispered. "We have the votes." "We have 6 votes," Cara whispered back. "Maybe. 6 is enough if we present well." The meeting was called to order by Rendal, the eldest elder and the one grandmother Vargoss had identified as the most hostile. He was a massive orc, heavy with age but still imposing, his face set in a permanent scowl. "We have one major proposal today," Rendal announced. "A request from the Vargoss and Thane families to establish a joint tenancy and to solve the pairing requirement for the Vargoss daughters." "Matriarch Vargoss, you may present." Grandmother Vargoss stood and walked to the front of the barn. She did not look nervous. She looked like a woman who had argued in front of councils before and won. "Honored elders," she began. "The pairing rule has served our family and our community for 2 generations. It was created to protect the Western Moor Grazing Charter, which requires undivided ownership to remain valid. My granddaughters, as paired daughters, were expected to marry into a single household to preserve that charter." She paused, letting the familiar facts settle. "But the rule was created for a specific problem, not as a universal solution. And when the rule creates more problems than it solves, it is time to find a better way." She gestured to Thane, who stood and joined her at the front. Together they unrolled the map Kade had drawn, now updated with detailed annotations and legal references. "We propose a joint tenancy between the Vargoss and Thane holdings," Grandmother Vargoss continued. "Under this structure, the land remains legally undivided, preserving the grazing charter. But the 2 families merge their assets, creating a stronger combined holding that benefits both." Thane took over, his voice gruff but clear. "The economic benefits are significant. Combined grazing across both properties increases sheep capacity by 30%. Shared access to the Vargoss signal tower improves safety for the entire region. And both families gain flexibility to make matches based on affection and compatibility rather than legal necessity." One of the elders, a sharp-faced woman named Kess, spoke up. "This sounds like a way to avoid the pairing rule without repealing it. Is that your intention?" "Our intention is to follow the law while meeting the needs of our families," Grandmother Vargoss said smoothly. "The pairing rule remains in place for families who find it useful. But this proposal demonstrates that there are other ways to preserve grazing charters without forcing sisters into unwanted marriages." "And the human?" Rendal asked, his voice dripping with disdain. He pointed at Kade. "He is the one pushing this, is he not?" "An outsider who wants to take one of our daughters." Kade stood before Grandmother Vargoss could respond. "I am the one who researched the legal structure, yes. But the proposal is coming from the families, not from me. I am a mason. I solve problems about how things fit together. This is a problem that needed solving, and I solved it." "You solved it to benefit yourself," Rendal said. "I solved it to benefit everyone," Kade corrected. "Cara and I benefit because we can marry. Calla and Doran benefit because they can marry. The families benefit because the holding is stronger. The community benefits because the signal tower is maintained and improved. The only people who do not benefit are those who prefer tradition over practicality." "That is enough," Rendal snapped. "You do not lecture the council, boy." Then do not accuse me of selfishness when I am offering a solution that helps everyone, Kade said evenly. He did not sit down. Mara spoke up from her seat at the table. I have a question for the Vargoss twins. Cara, Calla, please stand. The sisters stood together, their hands clasped. They looked young and vulnerable under the scrutiny of the room. You both support this proposal? Mara asked gently. Yes, Cara said. Yes, Calla echoed. And you, Cara, want to marry the human mason? I do, Cara said. Her voice was steady. And you, Calla, want to marry the Thane boy? I do, Calla said. Mara nodded slowly. Then I support the proposal. Forcing sisters into a shared marriage when they want different futures is cruelty disguised as tradition. If there is a legal way to avoid that cruelty, we should take it. One of the other elders, the cattleman Thane had identified as a supporter, spoke next. I agree. The economics are sound. The law is sound. The only objection is prejudice, and that is not a basis for governance. The debate went on for another hour. Rendall argued passionately against the proposal, calling it a corruption of tradition and a dangerous precedent. Two other elders joined him, their objections ranging from suspicion of humans to fear that other families would demand similar accommodations. But the supporters held firm. Grandmother Vargoss answered every legal question. Thane addressed every economic concern. Cara and Calla spoke briefly but powerfully about their right to choose their own futures, and when the vote was finally called, Kade held his breath. All in favor of approving the joint tenancy proposal and granting an exception to the pairing rule for the Vargoss daughters. 7 hands went up. Grandmother Vargoss, Thane's 2 allies, Mara, Karth the Weaver, the former shepherd, and after a long hesitation, Torvan the young herder representative. 7 votes, a majority. The proposal is approved, Rendall said sourly. Vargoss and Thane families may proceed with the joint tenancy. The pairing requirement is waived. Kade felt Cara's hand find his, her grip tight. He squeezed back, and for a moment they just stood there, letting the reality settle. They had won. The barn erupted in conversation, some supportive, some angry. Kade saw Rendall glaring at him from the elders' table. He also saw Mara smiling. Grandmother Vargoss made her way through the crowd to them. Well done, Mason. I did not think we would get Torvan. He wanted to vote yes, Kade said. He just needed permission to do it without looking weak. You understand people, Grandmother Vargoss said. That will serve you well in this family. Over the next 2 months, the legal work to establish the joint tenancy took up every spare hour Kade had. He met with the land registry, drafted contracts, negotiated boundary markers, and coordinated with Thane's steward to merge the sheep grazing schedules. He also finished the signal tower. The final stone was set in late summer, and the beacon platform was completed on a clear, windy day with half the moor watching. Kade lit the signal fire for the first time as a test, and the flame roared to life, visible for miles in every direction. Cara stood beside him on the platform, her hand in his, and looked out across the moor. It is beautiful. It is functional, Kade corrected. Beauty is a bonus. You built it, Cara said. That makes it beautiful. The wedding was planned for the autumn equinox, a traditional time for orc marriages. It would be a double ceremony, with Cara and Kade exchanging vows alongside Calla and Doran. Grandmother Vargoss had insisted, saying that the 2 marriages were linked by more than timing. You fought for each other, she said. You should celebrate together. The preparations were chaotic. There were lambs to slaughter for the feast, wool to weave for the ceremonial cloaks, and 100 small details that seemed to multiply daily. Kade found himself drafted into helping with everything from building extra tables to negotiating with the traveling musician who would play for the dancing. But through it all, He and Cara stole moments together. Walks across the moor at sunset. Evenings by the fire in the longhouse, talking about the future. Quiet mornings on the signal tower, watching the sunrise and planning where to build their own small house on the merged holding. "I want it near the boundary stream," Cara said one morning, "so we can hear the water." "The ground there is soft," Kade said. "We will need a deep foundation." "Then we will build a deep foundation," Cara said. She leaned her head on his shoulder. "I cannot believe this is real, that we are really doing this." "We are really doing this," Kade said. He kissed the top of her head. "And it is going to be good." The day before the wedding, Calla found Kade in the barn where he was helping set up the benches for the ceremony. She looked nervous. "Can I talk to you?" she asked. "Of course." Calla glanced around to make sure they were alone, then said, "I never thanked you properly, for everything you did." "You do not need to thank me," Kade said. "Yes, I do," Calla said firmly. "You could have just walked away. You could have finished the tower and left, and no one would have blamed you. But you stayed, you fought for us. You risked your reputation and your standing to make this work." "I did it for Cara," Kade said. "You did it for all of us," Calla corrected. "You gave Doran and me a future. You gave grandmother a way to retire the pairing rule without losing the holding. You gave the community a better way forward." She smiled, and it was the same mischievous grin he had seen that first week when she and Cara had teamed up to prank him. "You are a good man, Kade Emmerson. My sister is lucky to have you." "I am the lucky one," Kade said quietly. "No," Calla said. "You are both lucky, and that is the best kind of love." She hugged him quickly, then left before he could respond. Kade stood in the barn, surrounded by half-built benches and the smell of fresh hay, and let himself feel the full weight of what was about to happen. He was getting married. To an orc woman he loved more than he had thought possible, on a moor that had become home. Surrounded by a family that had accepted him, despite every reason not to. It was terrifying and wonderful and absolutely right. The wedding day dawned clear and bright, with the kind of crisp autumn air that made every color sharper. The ceremony was held on the moor near the signal tower, with the whole community gathered to witness. Cara wore a dress of deep green wool, embroidered with silver thread in patterns that represented the Vargoss family line. Her hair was braided with autumn flowers, and she looked more beautiful than Kade had ever seen her. Calla wore a similar dress in gold, standing beside Doran, who was dressed in his best with his dark hair neatly trimmed. The ceremony itself was simple. An elder named Wren, who had voted in favor of the proposal, officiated. She spoke about the importance of family, the strength of partnership, and the courage it took to forge a new path. Then she turned to Kade and Cara. "Do you, Kade Emmerson, take Cara Vargoss as your wife to stand with her in all seasons, to build a future together, to honor the bonds of family and holding?" "I do," Kade said. His voice was steady. "And do you, Cara Vargoss, take Kade Emmerson as your husband to stand with him in all seasons, to build a future together, to honor the bonds of family and holding?" "I do," Cara said. Her eyes were shining with tears. Wren repeated the vows for Calla and Doran, who answered with matching smiles. "Then, by the authority of the elders and the will of the community, I declare you married. May your lives be long, your holdings prosperous, and your love enduring." The crowd erupted in cheers. Kade pulled Cara into his arms and kissed her, and for a moment the rest of the world disappeared. There was only her and the wind, and the knowledge that they had built something real together. The feast that followed was enormous. Tables groaned under the weight of roasted lamb, fresh bread, cheese, and barrels of ale. The musician played while people danced on the grass, their feet pounding out rhythms that echoed across the moor. Kade danced with Cara until his feet ached, then sat at one of the tables to catch his breath. Grandmother Vargoss joined him, a cup of ale in her gnarled hand. "You did well, Mason," she said. "Better than I expected." "Thank you," Kade said. "I think—" The old woman chuckled. "It is a compliment. I did not believe you could pull this off. I thought you would fail, and Cara would have her heart broken, and we would be back to the pairing rule with nothing to show for it but bitterness." "I am glad I proved you wrong," Kade said. "So am I," Grandmother Vargoss said. She was quiet for a moment, watching the dancers. Then she said, "My husband was human. Did you know that?" Kade stared at her. "No, I had no idea." "It was a long time ago," she said. 60 years. The prejudice was worse then. We faced things you cannot imagine, but he was a good man and we built a good life together." She looked at Kade. "It will not be easy. People will judge you. They will judge your children. But if you love each other and if you work together, you can build something that lasts." "We will," Kade promised. "See that you do," Grandmother Vargoss said. She stood, patting his shoulder. "Now go dance with your wife. She is waiting." Kade found Cara by the signal tower, looking up at the dark structure silhouetted against the twilight sky. He came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "That tomorrow Calla and Doran leave for their new house on the south pasture," Cara said. "And the holding will feel different." "Different does not mean bad," Kade said. "I know," Cara said. "But it is the end of something. She and I have never been apart." "You will visit," Kade said. "And she will visit us. And when the first child is born, they will be so close you will see each other constantly." Cara turned in his arms and smiled. "Are you planning children already?" "I am planning a future," Kade said. "Children are part of that, eventually." "Eventually," Cara agreed. She kissed him softly. "I love you." "I love you too," Kade said. They stood together in the growing dark, the sounds of the celebration drifting up from below, and Kade thought about the question the twins had asked him 2 months ago on the scaffold. "Choose now, human. Which of us?" He had not chosen the way they expected. He had not picked one sister and rejected the other. He had chosen a third path, one that required work and risk and faith that the world could be better than the rules that governed it. And in choosing that path, he had found not just love, but family, purpose, and a place to call home. The next morning, the holding was quiet. The wedding guests had departed, the tables had been cleared, and the normal rhythms of work were reasserting themselves. Kade woke beside Cara in the small room they now shared in the longhouse and felt a deep sense of contentment, but there was work to be done. Calla and Doran were leaving at midday for the southern section of the merged holding, where they would begin building their own household. The entire family gathered to see them off. Cara hugged her sister tightly. "Visit soon." "Every week," Calla promised. "More if you need me." "I will need you," Cara said, "but I will be all right." Calla pulled back and looked at her twin. "We did it. We actually did it." "We had help," Cara said, glancing at Kade. "We had a miracle," Calla corrected. She turned to Kade. "Take care of her." "I will," Kade said. Doran shook his hand. "Thank you for everything." "Build a good life," Kade said. "That is thanks enough." They rode away down the track, their cart loaded with tools and supplies, and Cara stood beside Kade watching until they disappeared over the ridge. "It is strange," she said quietly, "being apart." "It will get easier," Kade said, "and we have our own life to build now." "Yes," Cara said. She took his hand. "Let us start." They spent the autumn building their own small house by the boundary stream, just as they had planned. Kade designed it carefully, a sturdy stone structure with a deep foundation to handle the soft ground. Cara helped with every step, hauling stone and learning to mix mortar and pointing the joints until they were smooth and weatherproof. By the time the first snow fell, the house was finished. It was small but well made, with a good hearth and thick walls that kept out the wind. They moved in on the winter solstice, lighting the first fire and sharing a simple meal of bread and cheese. "It is perfect," Cara said, looking around the single room that would be their home. "It is a start," Kade said. "We can add on as we need more space. For children." Cara asked, a teasing note in her voice. "Eventually," Kade said. "When we are ready." Cara leaned against him, and they sat together by the fire, listening to the wind outside and the crackle of the flames. Winter passed into spring, and the rhythm of the merged holding settled into place. Kade took on more projects, building a new lambing barn for the southern pasture and improving the water channels that fed the sheep troughs. Cara managed the wool production, coordinating with Calla to ensure that both households contributed fairly to the shared work. The joint tenancy proved as successful as Kade had predicted. The combined grazing rotations increased sheep numbers, and the shared signal tower provided security for both families. Other families on the moor began asking about similar arrangements, and Grandmother Vargoss found herself advising on legal structures she had once opposed. "You started something," she told Kade one evening. "The pairing rule is on its way out. 3 other families have petitioned the elders for joint tenancies in the last month." "That is good," Kade said. "It means fewer people trapped by outdated customs." "It also means more work for you," Grandmother Vargoss said with a sly smile. "They all want the human mason who solved the Vargoss problem to help them solve theirs." Kade laughed. "I am a builder, not a lawyer." "You are whatever the community needs you to be," Grandmother Vargoss said. "Get used to it." In the second summer after their marriage, Cara told Kade she was pregnant. They were sitting by the boundary stream in the evening, watching the water run clear and cold over the stones. "Are you happy?" she asked, her hand resting on her still flat stomach. "I am terrified," Kade admitted. "And yes, very happy." "Good," Cara said, "because I am terrified too." The pregnancy progressed without complications. Cara worked as long as she could, only stopping when Grandmother Vargoss threatened to tie her to a chair. Calla visited constantly, bringing food and advice and helping prepare the small room they had added to the house for a nursery. The baby was born on a cold morning in late winter, a daughter with green skin, a shade lighter than her mother's and dark hair like her father's. She had no tusks, which Grandmother Vargoss said sometimes happened with half-orc children, but her ears were slightly pointed and her eyes were the same deep brown as Cara's. "What will you call her?" Calla asked, holding the baby while Cara rested. Cara looked at Kade. They had discussed names for weeks, going through family histories and settling on something that felt right. "Freya," Cara said softly. "Freya Emmerson." "It is a good name," Calla said. She looked down at the baby and smiled. "Hello, Freya, welcome to the family." Freya was a healthy, noisy baby who demanded constant attention and gave very little sleep in return. Kade learned to change swaddling clothes, to walk the floor at midnight soothing a crying infant, to function on 4 hours of sleep and still build a straight wall. He also learned what it meant to love someone so fiercely that it hurt. Watching Freya sleep in Cara's arms, or seeing her tiny hand curl around his finger, filled him with an emotion so powerful it took his breath away. "She is perfect," he whispered one night, standing over the cradle. "She is exhausting," Cara said from the bed, but she was smiling. "That too," Kade admitted. As Freya grew, so did the holding. Calla and Doran had their first child a year later, a son they named Marcus. The two families visited constantly, and the children grew up together, running across the moor and learning the work of the holding side by side. The community slowly changed as well. The joint tenancy model spread, and the pairing rule faded into history. Younger families began making matches based on affection rather than economics, and the moor became a place where change was possible. Kade never stopped building. He designed barns and houses, repaired walls and bridges, and taught his skills to anyone who wanted to learn. But his proudest achievement was the signal tower, standing tall on the ridge, its beacon visible for miles in every direction. On the 5th anniversary of their wedding, Kade and Cara climbed the tower together. It was tradition now, something they did every year to mark the day. They stood on the beacon platform and looked out across the moor, at the patchwork of fields and pastures, the scattered houses, the families who had built lives here. "You ever wonder what would have happened if you had just walked away?" Cara asked. "If you had finished the tower and left without getting involved?" "Sometimes," Kade admitted, "but not often." "What do you think would have happened?" "You and Calla would have found another way," Kade said. "Maybe not as quickly, maybe not as cleanly. But you are both too stubborn to have stayed trapped forever." "Maybe," Cara said, "but I am glad we did not have to find out." She turned to him and smiled. "I am glad you stayed. I am glad you fought for us." "I am glad I found you," Kade said simply. "Everything else was just logistics." They lit the beacon together as the sun set, the flames roaring to life and sending light across the darkening moor. It was a signal of safety, of community, of home. And standing there with Cara's hand in his, watching the fire burn bright against the twilight sky, Kade knew that he had built something that would last. Not just the tower, or the house, or the holding. He had built a family, a future. A place where love mattered more than prejudice, where courage created possibility, and where two people who should never have met had found each other and changed the world, one stone at a time. Below them, the moor stretched out in all directions, vast and beautiful and full of life. And somewhere in the distance, another signal fire answered theirs, a chain of light connecting families across the darkness. Kade squeezed Cara's hand and she squeezed back. "Home," she said softly. "Home," Kade agreed. And it was.